I was holding the eviction notice when I heard him scream. The sound tore through the thin walls of apartment 4B like shrapnel through flesh, a guttural animal wail that made my clipboard clatter to the floor. 23 years processing evictions. In downtown Phoenix, and I'd never heard anything like it. Not desperation, not anger, pure, concentrated agony. Jesus Christ, muttered Derek, my partner for the day. He was new. Still had that eager-to-please shine that hadn't been beaten out of him by years of throwing families onto the street. Should we call someone? I pressed my ear to the door. The screaming had stopped, replaced by something worse. Ragged, sobbing that sounded like it was being torn from someone's throat. My hand hovered over my radio. Standard protocol said we wait for backup if there's a disturbance. But something about those sobs. Mr. Santos? I called through the door. Sir, this is Maricopa County Housing Authority. We need to speak with you about your lease termination. Silence. I tried again, softer this time. Sir, I know this is difficult. We're here to help make this transition as smooth as possible. The door opened so suddenly I stumbled backward. The man standing there was nothing like what I'd expected. From the file photo, Miguel Santos, age 72, disabled veteran, 3 months behind on rent. The photo showed a clean-shaven man with clear eyes and a straight back. The person in front of me was a ghost. His face was gaunt, cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. His left arm hung at an unnatural angle. The file mentioned shrapnel damage from an IED in Fallujah, but seeing it in person made my stomach clench. What stopped me cold, though, were his eyes. They weren't looking at me. They weren't looking at anything in this world. I can't, he whispered, his voice like sandpaper on concrete. I can't leave him behind again. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Behind me. This was usually where we'd start the spiel about relocation assistance and grace periods. But something in Santos's face made me swallow the words. Leave who behind, sir? Santos's eyes snapped to mine with laser focus. For a moment, I saw the soldier he used to be, alert, dangerous, calculating. Then the moment passed, and he was just a broken old man again. You wouldn't understand, he said. You weren't there. He started to close the door, but I caught it with my palm. Mr. Santos, I need to serve you these papers. After that, we can talk about options. His apartment was a shrine to the dead. The walls were covered with photographs. Dozens of young faces in desert camouflage, most of them barely old enough to shave. In the center, enlarged and framed in black, was a photo of a kid who couldn't have been more than 19. Dark hair, easy smile, arms slung around Santos's shoulders, both of them squinting against the Iraqi sun. My boy, Santos said, following my gaze. Corporal Jimmy Reeves? Not my blood, but... He touched the frame with trembling fingers. 20 years old when the IED got his convoy. I was supposed to be with them that day. The apartment was otherwise spartanly clean, organized with military precision. But I could see the signs of a man losing his grip. Unpaid bills stacked on a card table, empty prescription bottles lined up like soldiers, a half-eaten can of beans growing mold on the kitchenette counter. Mr. Santos, I said gently, I know this is hard, but you have 30 days to vacate the premises. There are programs, 30 days. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You know how long I've been having the same dream? 3 years, 2 months, 18 days. Every night I'm back in that Humvee, and Jimmy's screaming for help, and I can't reach him because my fucking arm doesn't work. He held up his mangled left arm. Every morning I wake up, and for just a second, I think maybe today I'll save him. Maybe today I'll be fast enough. Derek was shifting from foot to foot, clearly wanting to get out of there. I couldn't blame him. The apartment felt like a tomb, heavy with grief and guilt and something else I couldn't name. The landlord's been patient, I lied. Patterson Properties was known for throwing out grandmothers on Christmas morning if it meant an extra month's rent. But the building's been sold. New owners want to renovate. Santos nodded absently. Jimmy wanted to be a teacher when he got home. Elementary school kids said they still believed in heroes. He picked up a letter from the card table. Official. Letterhead. Department of Veterans Affairs. You know what they offered me for losing my boy, for losing my arm, for losing my mind? $1,400 a month. $1,400 fucking dollars. The math was brutal and simple. Rent in Phoenix had skyrocketed since the pandemic. Santos's VA disability barely covered half of what this place cost now, and that was assuming he had nothing else to pay for. No food, no medicine, no heat in the desert winter. There are veteran housing programs, Derek offered, trying to be helpful. Transitional assistance. Santos's laugh was like breaking glass. You know what the wait list is for veteran housing in this county? 18 months. You know how many homeless vets died on the street last year while waiting for a bed? 47. I looked it up. I was supposed to serve the papers and leave. That was the job. But something was keeping me rooted to the spot, some instinct I couldn't name. Santos picked up another photograph, this one showing him and Jimmy, with their arms around a younger man in uniform. That's my little brother, Santos said, following my gaze. Tommy. Kid worshipped Jimmy like he was his own big brother. Used to write him letters every week when we were deployed. The younger soldier in the photo looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. There was something about the eyes, the set of the jaw. Tommy made it home, Santos continued. Got out after one tour, used his GI Bill for college. Smart kid. Smarter than me. He's got a good life now. Wife, kids, big house in Scottsdale. That's good, I said, though I sensed there was more to the story. Yeah. Santos's voice turned bitter. Real good. So good he hasn't spoken to me in 2 years. Says I need to move on from Jimmy. Says I'm wallowing in the past. Easy for him to say. He wasn't the one who was supposed to protect Jimmy. He wasn't the one who failed. I started to argue, but Santos held up his hand. You want to know the real kick in the teeth? Tommy's the one who got me this apartment. Pulled some strings, called in favors. Then when the rent went up and I couldn't pay, I called him for help. You know what he said? Maybe this is the universe telling you it's time to let go of Jimmy and move somewhere cheaper. The hatred in Santos's voice was toxic, corrosive. Somewhere cheaper. Like Jimmy was just some old furniture I needed to get rid of. I was reaching for my radio to call for mental health services when Derek's phone rang. The sound was jarring in the heavy silence of the apartment. Derek stepped into the hallway to take the call, his voice a low murmur through the doorway. Santos was staring at Jimmy's photograph again, his lips moving in what might have been a prayer or might have been a conversation. The afternoon sun slanted through the single window, casting long shadows across the shrine of faces on the walls. Mr. Santos, I said carefully, when was the last time you ate a real meal? He looked at me like I'd asked when he'd last been to the moon. What day is it? Tuesday. Tuesday. He nodded like this was profound information. Jimmy died on a Tuesday. Did I tell you that? March 15th, 2022. Ides of March. Should have been a warning, right? Derek came back in, his face pale. Mike, we need to go, now! Something in his voice made my blood run cold. What's wrong? That was my supervisor. Apparently there's been He glanced at Santos, then back at me. A situation with one of today's evictions. Downtown. They need us there immediately. Santos seemed to come back to himself, focusing on Derek with sharp attention. What kind of situation? Nothing that concerns you, sir, Derek said quickly, but I could see sweat beading on his forehead. Mr. Santos, we'll need to complete the service of these papers before we go. I handed Santos the eviction notice, watching as his eyes scanned the legal language that might as well have been written in Sanskrit for all the good it would do him. 30 days. Comply or be forcibly removed. Contact information for legal aid that had a 6-month waiting list. One more thing, I said, pulling out my card. If you need help connecting with services, or if you just need someone to talk to, Call me. My direct line's on the back. Santos took the card, studied it for a long moment. Michael Patterson, he read aloud. Same last name as the property management company. My stomach dropped. That's a coincidence. Is it? Santos's eyes had gone cold and calculating again. Michael Patterson, Patterson Properties. You want to tell me about that coincidence, Mike? Derek was tugging at my sleeve, but I couldn't move. Santos had stepped closer, and despite his age and injuries, there was something predatory in his posture. My uncle owns the company, I admitted. But I don't have anything to do with your uncle. Santos's voice was deadly quiet. Your uncle who's throwing a disabled veteran onto the street so he can renovate and charge double the rent. Mr. Santos, I'm just doing my job. Just following orders? The words came out like a slap. You know who else was just following orders, Mike? The MPs who told Jimmy's unit they had to take that convoy route even though intelligence said it was compromised, just following orders. Derek had his radio out now, calling for backup. But Santos ignored him, keeping his focus on me with the intensity of a sniper's scope. You want to know something funny, Mike? I've been sitting in this apartment for 3 months, watching my savings disappear, watching my medicine run out, wondering why God would keep me alive just to throw me out on the street like garbage. But now I think I understand. Mr. Santos, maybe this isn't about punishment. Maybe it's about opportunity. Maybe God put me here in this moment face to face with a Patterson so I could finally do something that matters. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Santos reached behind him, and I saw the grip of something tucked into his waistband. Sir, Derek said, his voice high and tight. Sir, let's everybody just stay calm. Santos pulled out a .45 caliber pistol, military issue, probably a souvenir from his service. But instead of pointing it at us, he turned it over in his hands, examining it like he'd never seen it before. This belonged to Jimmy, he said conversationally. They sent it back with his effects. Funny thing, they can send you a dead boy's gun, but they can't send you enough money to keep a roof over your head. Mr. Santos, please put the weapon down, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You know what Jimmy would say if he could see me now? Hiding in here like a coward while his memory gets bulldozed along with everything else that mattered. Santos looked up at me, and I saw tears streaming down his cheeks. He'd say, Sarge, you taught me that a soldier never leaves a brother behind. So why are you leaving me behind? The gun was shaking in Santos's hands. Derek had backed towards Shay. The door, but I found myself stepping closer. You're not leaving him behind, I said. Look around you. This whole place is a monument to Jimmy. To all of them. Monuments can be moved, Santos said. But brothers are forever. Jimmy's not in these photographs, Mike. He's not in this apartment. He's here. Santos tapped his chest with the barrel of the gun. And here. He tapped his temple. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let your uncle's greed make me abandon him again. The gun was pressed against Santos's temple now, his finger on the trigger. Derek was screaming into his radio for emergency services, but they'd never get here in time. Jimmy wouldn't want this, I said desperately. You said he wanted to be a teacher. Teachers don't give up. They find another way. What other way? Santos's voice was broken, defeated. I'm 72 years old, Mike. I've got one working. Arm, no money, no family who gives a shit. And in 30 days, I'll be sleeping in my car until they repossess that too. What exactly am I supposed to be fighting for? I thought about the math, about the impossibility of his situation, about the 47 veterans who died on the streets last year while waiting for help that never came. And I thought about something else, the familiar face in the photograph with Santos and Jimmy. Tell me about your brother again, I said. Tommy. Santos's eyes flicked toward the photograph. What about him? He's successful, right? Big house in Scottsdale? Yeah. So? What's his last name? Reeves. Tommy Reeves. What does... Santos stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening. Oh my God. I pulled out my phone, fingers shaking as I scrolled through my contacts. There it was. Tom Reeves, Maricopa County Supervisor. The man who'd been pushing for more veteran services funding. The man whose passionate speeches about supporting our troops had gotten him elected in a landslide. The man whose older brother had saved his life in Iraq 20 years ago. Santos was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You know Tommy? He's my boss, I said. Or my boss's boss anyway. He's the county supervisor who oversees the housing authority. The gun was still pressed to Santos's temple, but his finger had moved away from the trigger. Tommy never mentioned, "What's your full name, Mr. Santos?" "Miguel Eduardo Santos." I dialed Tom's direct line, praying he'd pick up. It rang once, twice. "Mike? What's wrong?" Derek called in some kind of emergency. "Tom, I'm standing in front of Miguel Santos. He's about to kill himself because we're evicting him from his apartment." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for an eternity. "Miguel?" Tom's voice was barely a whisper. "Yeah. Miguel Santos. The man who pulled you out of a burning Humvee in Fallujah. The man who carried you to safety when you were 2. Shot up to walk. The man whose best friend died because he wasn't there to protect him." Santos was crying openly now, the gun forgotten in his lap. "Tommy?" I put the phone on speaker. "Sarge?" Tom's voice was thick with emotion. "Jesus Christ, Sarge, what have I done?" "I called you," Santos whispered. "I called you and asked for help, and you told me to let go of Jimmy." "I know. God help me, I know. I thought you needed tough love. I thought if I cut you off, you'd have to face reality and move on." "Jimmy was my reality, Tommy. Taking care of him, keeping his memory alive. That was the only thing keeping me alive." "I know that now." "Sarge, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." Derek was filming everything on his phone. Protocol required. Documentation of all interactions. But I suspected this was going to be more than just another case file. "Tommy," Santos said, his voice small and broken, "I don't know how to keep going. Everything hurts all the time, and I can't save anyone, and I can't even save myself." "You saved me," Tom said fiercely. "When that IED flipped our Humvee, when the fuel was leaking and the engine was on fire, you crawled in there and dragged my ass out, even though your arm was hanging by tendons. You saved my life, Sarge. Let me save yours." Santos looked at me, confusion written across his face. "I don't understand." "Give me 30 minutes, Tom said. "Don't do anything crazy, okay? Just give me 30 minutes. The line went dead. Santos set the gun on the card table, carefully, like it might explode. We sat in silence, watching the shadows lengthen across Jimmy's shrine. 28 minutes later, we heard footsteps in the hallway. Not just one person, several people, moving with purpose. Santos tensed, reaching for the gun again. "It's okay," I said, though I had no idea if that was true. The knock was firm but respectful. "Miguel, it's Tom." Santos opened the door, and suddenly the tiny apartment was filled with people. Tom Reeves, older now, graying at the temples, but unmistakably the young soldier from the photograph. Behind him, a woman in an expensive suit, who introduced herself as the county attorney. 2 men in military dress uniforms with enough ribbons on their chests to stock a metal shop. And bringing up the rear, a news crew with a camera. Tom and Santos stared at each other for a long moment. Then Tom stepped forward and wrapped his arms around the older man, careful of his damaged arm. "I'm sorry, Sarge," Tom whispered. "I'm so goddamn sorry," Santos was crying again. But these tears were different. Relief, maybe. Or just the simple human contact he'd been denied for so long. "Gentlemen," the county attorney said, "I need to make something very clear. Mr. Santos, there will be no eviction. As of right now, your rent is being covered by the Maricopa County Veteran Emergency Housing Fund, a fund that's being established with emergency authorization from the county board." One of the military officers stepped forward. Sergeant Santos. I'm Colonel Martinez, Arizona National Guard. It's an honor to meet you, sir. Your service record is remarkable. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Combat Infantry Badge. We had no idea you were struggling. How did you? Santos began. I made some calls, Tom said. Turns out, when you tell people that a war hero is about to be thrown onto the street, they get very interested very quickly. The reporter, a young woman with predatory eyes, was already setting up her equipment. Mr. Santos, I'm Rebecca Chen from Channel 12 News. We'd like to do a story about veteran homelessness and the failures of the system to support our heroes. Santos looked overwhelmed, shrinking back toward Jimmy's photograph. I don't want to be on TV. You don't have to be, Tom said firmly. But Sarge, your story, it's not just about you. There are hundreds of veterans in this county alone who are facing the same thing. If we don't shine a light on this, nothing changes. The colonel nodded. Sir, with your permission, we'd like to use your case as an example of how the system can work when people care enough to make it work. The Emergency Housing Fund is just the beginning. We're talking about comprehensive reform, streamlined benefits, shorter wait times, better coordination between agencies. Santos looked around the room at all these people who'd materialized out of nowhere to help him. What about Jimmy? What about him? Tom asked gently. If I move, if I accept help, does that mean I'm leaving him behind? Tom walked over to the shrine of photographs, studying the faces of all those young soldiers. Jimmy wanted to be a teacher, right? Santos nodded. Teachers pass on what they know to the next generation. They make sure important lessons don't get lost. Tom turned back to his old sergeant. Maybe the best way to honor Jimmy isn't to lock yourself in this apartment and wait to die. Maybe it's to make sure his sacrifice, all their sacrifices, actually means something. The reporter was taking notes furiously. Mr. Santos, could you tell us about your friend Jimmy? What would he want people to know about veterans like you? Santos was quiet for a long time, staring at Jimmy's photograph. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady and clear. Jimmy used to say that a country that sends kids to war and then forgets about them when they come home doesn't deserve to call itself great. He said the measure of a nation isn't how it treats its heroes when the cameras are rolling. It's how it treats its broken soldiers when nobody's watching. The reporter's pen was flying across her notepad. And what would you say to other veterans who are facing similar situations? Santos looked directly into the camera. I'd say that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and that the brothers you think you've lost might be closer than you think. As the news crew packed up their equipment and the officials made their plans for reform and the apartment slowly emptied, Tom and Santos sat together on the old couch, looking at Jimmy's photograph. You know, Tom said, I never thanked you properly for saving my life. You thanked me, Santos replied. Every day for 20 years, you thanked me by living a good life, by making something of yourself, by serving people. But I forgot the most important part, Tom said. I forgot that you were still fighting the war, and I left you to fight it alone. Santos picked up Jimmy's gun from the card table, ejecting the magazine and clearing the chamber with practiced efficiency. I'm tired of fighting ghosts, Tommy. Maybe it's time to start fighting for something again. We'll fight together this time, Tom promised. All of us. No one gets left behind. As the sun set over Phoenix, casting long shadows through the apartment window, Santos began taking down the photographs from the walls. Not throwing them away, carefully packing them, getting ready to move them somewhere new. Jimmy's shrine would travel with him, but it wouldn't be a tomb anymore. It would be a reminder that some debts of honor are worth more than money, and that the truest way to honor the dead is to fight like hell for the living. The next morning, Santos's story was on the front page of every newspaper in Arizona. By noon, the Veteran Housing Fund had received over $2 million in donations. By the end of the week, 3 other counties had established similar programs. And for the first time in 3 years, 2 months, and 19 days, Miguel Santos slept through the night without dreaming of burning Humvees and boys who would never come home, because he'd finally learned the difference between leaving someone behind and carrying them forward. 6 months later, I was serving eviction papers to a different apartment when I heard my name called. Santos was standing in the lobby with a young woman, college-age, bright eyes, wearing a Veterans First volunteer t-shirt. "Mike," he said, shaking my hand with his good arm. "I want you to meet someone. This is Jessica Reeves, Jimmy's daughter. She's studying social work at ASU, specializing in veteran services." The young woman smiled, and I could see her father in her face. The same easy grin from the photograph that had started it all. "Mr. Patterson, my dad wrote about you in his letters home. He said Sergeant Santos talked about you all the time. How you were different from the other housing guys. How you actually seemed to care." I realized then that Jimmy's daughter was older than her father had been when he died. That time had kept moving, even though his story had stopped. "Your dad would be proud of what you're doing," I told her. "I hope so," she said. "Sergeant Santos is helping me set up a new program, peer counseling for combat veterans. Turns out, the best person to help someone who's lost is someone who's been lost themselves." Santos nodded toward the clipboard in my hand. "Still serving papers?" "Yeah," I said. "But things are different now. The county's got new protocols, automatic referrals to veteran services, mental health screenings, emergency assistance funds. Your story changed everything." "Jimmy's story changed everything," Santos corrected. "I just finally figured out how to tell it right." As they walked away, I heard Jessica ask, "Sergeant Santos, do you think my dad would have liked being a teacher?" "Kiddo," Santos replied, "your dad's been teaching people his whole life. He just needed the right students. The honor debt, I realized, is never really paid in full. It just gets passed forward, one life at a time, until the circle closes, and the broken become the healers, and the saved become the saviors. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to be there when it happens."